स्वतजे दैवी स्वस्तिरस्तु नः स्वस्तिर्मानुषेभ्यः ऊर्ध्वञ्जिगातु भेषजम् शन्नो अस्तु द्विपदे शञ्चतुष्पदे ॐ शान्तिः 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 सहस्रशीर्षा पुरुषः सहस्राक्षः सहस्रपात् स भूमिम् विश्वतो वृत्वा अत्यतिष्ठद्दशाङ्गुलम् पुरुष एवेदगम् सर्वम् यद्भूतं यच्च भूयम् उतामृतत्वस्येषाणः यदन्नेनातिरोहति एतावानस्य महिमा अतो ज्यायागिश्च पूरुषः पादोऽस्य विश्वाभूतानि त्रिपादस्यामृतम् दिवि त्रिपादोर्ध्व उदैत्पुरुषः पादोऽस्येह भवात् पुनः ततो विश्वम् व्यक्रामत् शासनानशने अभि तस्माद्विराडजायत विराजो अधिपूरुषः स जातो अत्यरिज्यत पश्चाद्भूमिमथो पुरः यत्पुरुषेण हविषा देवा यज्ञमतन्वत वसन्तो अस्यासीदाज्यम् ग्रीष्म इध्मः शरद्धभिः सप्तास्यासन् परिधजः त्रिः सप्त समिधः कृताः देवायज्ञम् तन्वानाः अबध्नन् पुरुषम् पशुम् तञ्यज्ञम् बर्हिषि प्रोक्षन् पुरुषम् जातमग्रतः तेन देवा अयजन्त साध्या ऋषयश्चजे तस्माद्यज्ञात् सर्वहुतः सम्भृतम् वृषदाज्यम् पशोगस्तागिश्चक्रे वायम्याने आरण्यान् ग्राम्याश्चजे तस्माद्यज्ञात् सर्वहुतः ऋचः सामानि जज्ञिरे छन्दागुंसि जज्ञिरे तस्मात् यजुस्तस्मादजायत तस्मादश्वा अजायन्त ये केचोभजादतः गावोह जज्ञिरे तस्मात् तस्माज्जाता अजावजः यत्पुरुषम् व्यदधुः कतिधा व्यकल्पयन् मुखम् किमस्य कौ बाहू कावूरूपादामुच्येते ब्राह्मणोऽस्य मुखमासीत् बाहूराजन्यः कृतः ऊरू तदस्य यद्वैश्यः पद्भ्यागम् शूद्रो अजायत चन्द्रमा मनसो जातः चक्षोः सूर्यो अजायत मुखादिन्द्रश्चाग्निश्च प्राणात् वायुरजायत नाभ्या आसीदन्तरिक्षम् शीर्ष्णोद्यौः समवर्तत पद्भ्याम् भूमिर्दिशः श्रोत्रात् तथा लोकागम् अकल्पयन् वेदाहमेतम् पुरुषम् महान्तम् आदित्यवर्णम् तमसस्तु पारे सर्वाणि रूपाणि विचित्य धीरः नामानि कृत्वाभिवदन् यदास्ते धाता पुरस्ताद्यमुदा जहार चक्रः प्रविद्वान् प्रदिशश्च तस्रः तमेवम् विद्वानमृत इह भवति नान्यः पन्था अयनाय विद्यते यज्ञेन यज्ञमयजन्त देवाः तान् त्राहिमानः सचन्ते यत्र पूर्वे साध्याः सन्ति देवाः अध्यः सम्भूतः पृथिव्यैरसाच्च विश्वकर्मणः समवर्तताधि तस्य त्वष्टा विदधद्रूपमेति तत्पुरुषस्य विश्वमाजानमग्रे वेदाहमेतम् पुरुषम् महान्तम् आदित्यवर्णम् तमसः परस्तात् तमेवम् विद्वानमृत इह भवति नान्यः पन्था विद्यते जनाय प्रजापतिश्चरति गर्भे अन्तः अजायमानो बहुधा विजायते तस्य धीराः परिजानन्ति योनिम् मरीचीनाम् पदमिच्छन्ति मेधसः यो देवेभ्य आतपति यो देवानाम् पुरोहितः पूर्वोजो देवेभ्यो जातः नमो रुचाय ब्राह्मणे रुचम् ब्राह्मम् जनयन्तः देवा अग्रे ततब्रुवन् यस्त्वैवम् ब्राह्मणो विद्यात् तस्य देवा असन्वशे ह्रीश्च ते लक्ष्मीश्च पत्न्यौ अहोरात्रे बाष्वे नक्षत्राणि रूपम् अश्विनम् व्यात्तम् इष्टम् मनिषाण अमुम् मनिषाण सर्वम् मनिषाण ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः
ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. So as planned, I would like to wrap up the mantra number 11, which, as you know, is answering the question that the Shastra poses itself to make it easier for us to wrap our minds around it. And the question was, yat purusham yadatuhu katidhapya kalpayan mukhan kimasya kau bahu kavuru pada vucchete. And the answer to that was in the 11th verse, which is Brahmanoho asya mukhamasit bahu rajanyah kritaha uru tadasya yad vaishyah padbhyagum shudro ajayata. Well, this is the verse that we have been taking. And the vision behind this verse is the makeup of this society, the makeup of Samaja Purusha. Okay. So what I'd like to do is to wrap this up today and go to the last verse, which starts with Chandrama Manaso Jataha Chaksho Suryo Ajayata Buddha Mukhadindrascha Agnischa. So that we will do from next week on. It might take a few classes, but after that, with a full revision, the Purusha Suktam will be over. So as I had indicated to you, that this mantra, number 11 that we are doing, has been extensively commented by Swami Maheshananji in his public lectures in New Delhi in the 1971, I think, era, the year of the 1971. And he is devoted in a very extensive commentary on different aspects of the society. And I found that even though it is highly insightful, it is perhaps more suited to the Vedic Hindu society in India. It's still suited for everybody, but the variations and the subtlety and the extension of all of the concepts he really revealed in full measure in these lectures. So for the last few days I have been reading them as best as I could, and I think pretty much, and I finished doing that today. So I thought what I would do is, of course, not do all of it because that will take us too long to do. And I also don't think it's really that useful in our lives. What is going to be useful in our lives is to be able to extract some of the main principles of this verse, which we have been doing. And so today what I will do, I went through this, I don't know, 150 pages, about this much of the book, and picked out some of the key concepts that I would like to summarize in the class today. And it's very possible that it doesn't flow sequentially. I may have to pick and choose from different concepts that really appeal to me, and I think will appeal to you as well. And so if there is a certain randomness to it, so be it. But I just want to make sure that I highlight rather than completely go through all of that. Okay, so just a prologue for today's class, and then we will finish this verse one way or the other. So the first thing is that as we have been studying the Varna system, the Varna Vyavastha, more than a system, as I mentioned last week, both the ashrama and the Varna system is a Vyavastha. So Vyavastha means a very carefully composed arrangement. Okay? So the thing that it became clear to me as I was reading Swami Maheshananji's commentary on this is that this arrangement, the Varna system, is not just for the human beings which you and I are currently interested in. And instead, it encompasses the entire world. It is really true for, at least let's look at it from this standpoint, the three main experiences that we have are Adi Bhautikam. So the three kinds of Shanti that we do are corresponding to Adi Bhautikam. Bhutebhyaha jatam iti bhautikam means all of the Jadavastus in the entire composition of the cosmos. Jadavastu means all the way from sun, stars, earth, Prithvi, water, all of those. These are called bhutaha. And so the Varna system encompasses that also. And I'll just allow me to finish the three, and then I will say how it encompasses all three. So the next one is Adi Daivam, Daivikam. So all the celestials who are in charge of all the important things in life as a Devata and Devis. So, for example, I think we have seen this before also, that really every function in this world has a Devata and a Devi associated with it. Like in even a government also, you have people that are in charge of immigration. You have people who are, the people that have been seconded for transportation secretary, so on. So there is a person in charge for each important function. So these on a cosmic level are the Devatas and Devis. Those also have a Varna system. And then the one that you and I are immediately concerned with respect to ourselves, is the Adhyatmikam, which is the individual Varna system. Anyway, the point here is that Ishvara, he does not do different things for different things. Some of the shapes may be different, some of the specifics may be slightly different, but it's the same structure throughout. Okay, and so here, this is one thing. This is one thing to know, that it is really a consistent Varna of fourfold Varna. And I'll explain why it is four and why it is not something else. So this is number one. Secondly, this Varna system is specifically done by the Creator. So this is chosen by the Creator. It is not arbitrarily done by human beings on their own. We cannot make this kind of a major classification of the four Varnas, because this comes to us from the very Creator itself. And Swami Maheshananji actually points out that in the Bhagavad Gita, it says, is an important verse here, which says, Chatur Varnyam Maya Srishtam Gunakarma Vibhagataha. Maya Srishtam means it is done by me. So here, the Gitacharya, Krishna, is the avatar of Vishnu, and so as the avatar of Ishvara, Vishnu the Ishvara, is saying, I did it specifically. So don't think that there is randomness in it. And so please have some understanding and insight and respect into why this is. It's a serious thing, really. Okay. Now, another thing is, why are there only four? So Swami Maheshananji spends a lot of time discussing that as well, and I'll give you the summary of it, which is that the three gunas, in fact, just a second, Chandra is on the phone. Yes, Chandra? You know what? I did not connect that. Thank you so much for calling. Okay, let me connect it. Thanks. Yeah, that's my fault. I did not connect the audio. Let me do that. Okay, my apologies. This I do from time to time. When I charge it, the camera is at another place. So when I bring it, I forget to put the wire into it. I have to think about some way to not make this mistake again. I'm sorry for that. So Swami Maheshananji was saying why there are four varnas. Okay. So This is a huge topic that he has taken, and I'm not sure that I will have the complete time to do so. In fact, I'll just give you the introduction. So what he says is that both Brahman, the Atma, and the Maya Shakti, which is the expression of Brahman. Maya Shakti is a reflection. It's an expression. And the reflection and the expression is different from Brahman, obviously. But they are very similar. Because until they are similar, you will not make the mistake of taking the Maya as Brahman. Here, without spending too much time, let me quickly say that if you take a rope to be a snake, then you have to see that there is a lot of similarity between a rope and a snake, and a lot of dissimilarity between a rope and a snake. But in any way, you will not take a rope to be an elephant, because there is no similarity between rope and elephant. But there is some similarity between rope and snake. So similarly, the Brahman and Maya both are similar in some ways, but opposite to each other in some other ways. Just like in the case of snake and rope also, the rope is harmless. It's very beautiful. It's just sitting there and not moving. Whereas the snake, the imagined snake, is dangerous. It's moving. And you imagine all kinds of shape, all kinds of colors to it, and so on and so forth. So it's dissimilar. So the reason we are saying is that if you look at the entire Srishti, it has the three aspects of Brahman, which is Sat, Chit and Ananda. And corresponding to that, there is the gunas, Trigunatmikaha Maya, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. So those connect one for one to the Sat, Chit, Ananda. Okay? So really speaking, Brahmana, Kshatriya and Vaishya are the three jatis corresponding to the three aspects of Brahman, Sat, Chit, Ananda. Shudra, on the other hand, is not considered in Veda to be a jati. Jati means that there is some specificity for the jati, whereas everyone is a Shudra. Everyone is a Shudra. So the Shudra is not a jati, it's not a jati, it's a jatiless designation. Everyone born in a way is a Shudra. How is it that a Shudra? We'll go through different things very briefly. So the main thing to say is that the Shudra is characterized by sorrow, by disappointment, by the fact that I am a limited person and I don't know how to conquer my problems in life. I'll do the best I can. So this attitude everybody is born in. And you feel that I can somehow go through the life without really tripping over myself. I will be okay, but that's the best I can do. So this kind of an attitude where you don't look for answers and you are just being on your own, stubborn in trying to solve the life's problems, is the Shudra. And this is really close to 100%. But then the people who make an effort and to take the help of the spiritual wisdom are the ones who are into one of the three jatis corresponding to Satchitananda. And how it corresponds to Satchitananda, we don't have time for. We'll have to do it some other context. But this is the main reason why there are 4 varnas. So it is really speaking, there are 3 varnas, and another one is the base level, which is good for everyone. Okay? All right. Next thing is that it is not proper to distinguish between guna, the quality, and jati, the class that you are born in. It is not proper to separate them. People will say, he may be jatitaha. From a jati standpoint, he may be brahmana, but the way he expresses himself and behaves in the life is totally non-Brahman. You can say that. So there are some people who say that the jati is not really an important aspect of it, only guna is important aspect of it. And there's a viewpoint to that. Swami Maheshananji says no, you cannot say that. Why? The reason for that is that if you look at the transition from one life to another, which as you know very well, by now I think you should know this, that the sthula sharira changes rather drastically. You could, for whatever reason, becoming a man in one life and a woman in another life. That can happen, which is a drastic change. Your entire bodily structure changes. But when it comes to the sukshma sharira, you do not have drastic changes from one life to the other. That doesn't happen. There's no discontinuity in the curve. Suddenly you just jump over to like a stock market, It doesn't happen. There is a much more continuous process linking one life to the other. Improvements that you make in your mind carry over. And any losses that you have in your thinking carry over. There may be some minor adjustments here and there, but they are continuing on. Why are we saying this in this context? Here is the reason. Swamiji says that if a person is born as a brahmana, or any other for that matter, let's say brahmana, it must be that the vasanas and thinking of this person in the previous life was tending towards a deeper understanding of what life is. And those tendencies are taken into account when the choice of mother and father that give rise to the new baby is taken up. Why should we say that? So because there is a continuation of the tendencies from one life to the other. It doesn't mean that you cannot cross over from one to the other, but that would have to depend upon what you did in your previous few lives. Here Swamiji gives a very interesting example. He says, suppose, he says, consider a situation where a couple, husband and wife, this is a Hindu couple, that has a new daughter-in-law, first-year daughter-in-law. And those who are in the north from India will know there is a ritual once a year which is called Karva Chauth. And what that means is that the wife prays for the good health of her husband, and she keeps a partial fast during the day. So she's supposed to eat of food before the sun rises, and she has to eat again after the moon rises in the evening. But this is the ritual. Okay, this is considered to be a very important ritual for a newlywed, and so the mother-in-law is telling her husband, listen, take 500 rupees and please buy a new sari for our daughter-in-law, because I want her to wear brand new clothes on this auspicious day. So he said, sure, I will do that. So he goes to the shop and he's shopping around, and suddenly there is a sale. The sale is not in sari. These are all Swamiji's words. I'm just telling you this, not my words. And the sale is on not in saris, but on some jewelry piece. And the jewelry piece, instead of 500 rupees, was originally at 800 rupees, and on this day it is on sale for 500 rupees. So this fellow thinks, I think this is a good deal, because my daughter-in-law would really love this jewelry, and it's an expensive jewelry, it's worth 800 rupees. So he gives the 500 rupees and he buys the jewelry. Comes home and his wife says, so where's the sari? And he says, here's what happened. I was going to look for a sari. I was going to buy a sari. But then I found the sale on jewelry and I got a good deal. Aren't you happy? The wife said, no. This is the stupidest thing that I can ever think of. I want her to wear new clothes. She already has pieces of jewelry. What are you going to do with this? So Swamiji says this is exactly what happens when a person is born into a Brahmin family. His mother and father are both Brahmins, and they really rear the person quite well. He goes and he does the Gayatri Mantra and all of that, Sandhya Vandanam and everything. And then one day, what happens is that there is a new business for sale. And this fellow is well read, and he says, I want to buy this business because this is a good business to get into. He buys the business and does very well in the business. And everybody says, my God, you're such a smart person, I cannot believe it. So he gets very much into the commerce and sale and buying things and so on, and becomes rich. He forgets about his Brahmin. He's not a bad person, but really, even though by jati he was a Brahmana, but by his disposition and his own choice and his own mistakes, he becomes a Vaishya. He becomes a trader and is now very concerned about prices and this, that or the other. So therefore, Swamiji says, listen, yes, you are born into a classification. If you have not displayed any tendencies towards spiritual learning, you'll be born into a Shudra. Why? Because it is you just go through life without any higher purpose. Now that doesn't mean that the Shudra born doesn't discover the higher purpose during the life. That is of course possible. But it is simply a issue of, as I think mentioned also, probability. Probability. So a Brahmana is going to be a little bit more probable in looking at the spiritual aspect of life. And before that, it is very important that if he is born into that jati, then you should really understand that there is a reason why you were born into the jati, and you should make all the efforts to maximize your spiritual growth. And also inculcate all of the gunas. Doesn't mean that you have all the gunas, but you already have a background, and you should try to stay within the background by maximizing the gunas. Here he has given the gunas of a Brahmana. Similarly for others also, I'm just giving one example. So the Brahmana's gunas are a control of what the senses, shama. Shama. And your mind and your sense of how much you should eat, you should have a disciplined life. So this is shama. Dhamma. Dhamma means, as we know already, control of your outward sense organs, your hands, your eyes, and all the organs of actions must be under your control. So this is number 2. Number 3 is the important one, tapas. So tapas means austerity and discipline. And it is important and these are all important things for someone who wants to maximize the qualities in order for them to gain Parmeshwara's blessings. And so they have to have tapas, which means discipline in waking up early in the morning, taking a bath, doing puja, not overeating, all those kinds of things. And also, this is a whole description of the Samaja Purusha. So in every aspect of this, whether you are a Brahmana or Kshatriya or Vaishya or Shudra, the more you do it for the society, the faster your own growth will be. If the Brahmana, for example, does all these tapas and shama and dhamma and a few others that I will mention, but really doesn't share the fruits with anybody, it is all done for your own good. You close your eyes and you're just doing dhyanam and so on. That's not as useful as sharing whatever practices you're doing for the good of others. Teaching, practicing, sharing. All of this is the Samaja Purusha's dimensions that all people should do, especially the Brahmana. So tapas, shaucham, cleanliness. Cleanliness of the body, cleanliness of the mind. More important is the cleanliness of the mind. Keep aside any raga dvesha. Then kshantihi. Not shanti but kshanti, kshama, which means forgiveness. If somebody wants to do a puja and has called you and has said, I will be there at 9 o'clock, and the person forgets, he doesn't call. Now if this Pandit is sitting there and he's looking at his watch and he says it's already 9:05, 9:15, the person hasn't called, he calls him and the person says, oops, I forgot, and can we reschedule it? He cannot show disappointment and say, oh my gosh, you wasted a lot of my time. He should say, there's no problem. No problem. It's okay. Everybody forgets, I also forget. It's okay. When can we come again? A sense of forgiveness, shanti. Arjavam. Arjavam means simplicity and consistency. Do not overpromise. Just do what is necessary and stick with it. Arjavam. Jnanam. Jnanam means adhyayanam. Adhyayanam, or learning the Shastra, learning the Ucharanam, learning the chanting, and having chanting is a very important discipline, really. Very important discipline, because it's a way for you to discipline your thoughts and your voice exactly as it is supposed to be. You cannot make up your own swaras. So all these kinds of things, Sahasra Purushas, Sahasra Shirsha Purusha, up and down and everything has to be absolutely exact. And if you can really do chanting in the morning, just choose whatever you are trying to do and really do a good job of that. You will find your mind becomes very disciplined. Chanting, Adhyayanam. Vijnanam, so that is Jnana. Vijnana means an understanding, a deeper understanding of Paramatma. So the meaning of the verses is Vijnana. And finally is Asmita. Asmita means complete Shraddha towards the Shastra, the Parameshwara, and also the Guru that is revealing the truth of the Shastra and Parameshwara. Asmita. Anyway, so the Brahmana is brought into this life of saying this is what you should do. What you actually do is up to you. But the direction of the person is brought into this point. This is you should do. If you want to just go to college and go to IIT and just do some practical nature of things and so on, and you don't want to really do your research and so on, it's fine. Chances are that in your next life, the Ishvara will say, I think you should be a Kshatriya. You should be a Kshatriya. But that doesn't mean that the Kshatriya cannot have the same gunas as the Brahmana does. Really, everybody is a reflection of Brahman. And how much we can do, it all depends upon our background, our family, the society, and so on. Everyone has to do that. So, Kshatriya, he was talking about the gunas of the Kshatriya. He has a lot of detail on that also. How are we doing by time? 8:36. So the Kshatriya has really the same kind of gunas. But in addition to that, the gunas of a Kshatriya are practicalness, application, relevance to the society. This is very important. He gives a very interesting example. He says, there was a teacher, a math teacher, and it's about given to maybe fourth or fifth, standard class, about a maybe 10-year-old person. There is a math teacher. He says, okay, boys and girls, here is the question. Suppose you have to borrow money at 4%, and you are borrowing $1,750 at 4%. How much is the interest on $1,750 at 4%? So everybody used to sort of start, they all started writing in. There was one boy who raised his hand and said, sir, can I ask you a question? So he says, yes, what is it? He said, sir, where do you get 4% interest in life, in the marketplace? Because my father is doing this all the time, and he complains that he cannot get any loan less than 11%. So if you can get it for 4%, I really like to know where to get it so I can write to him. So he was not thinking about the theoretical aspect of it, he was saying practically. This headmaster, his teacher, has never even started business or anything. He had no idea what's 4%, 11%. This was just a math question. So Swamiji says, so the Kshatriya has a special responsibility to make sure that whatever he learns is applied in terms of the orderly conduct of the society. And so there are gunas, and so this means dhairyam, virata, being very, very forcefulness and leadership and so on. So all of this is the Kshatriya's dharmas. Now in terms of the Vaishya's dharmas, the most important Vaishya dharma is that the prosperity, the laws of prosperity not only apply for himself or herself, but to the entire society. That you make sure that you are not taking advantage of the society to get yourself rich. You also share it with others and to teach it to the others and stay within the limits of propriety. And so this is the dharma of the Vaishyas. Otherwise, the prosperity of the country is really the main responsibility of the Vaishya. Now, Shudra, on the other hand, really should follow whichever jati is most appealing to that person. Doesn't matter. Because you are free. The main thing you have to do is to take on the promise of doing something more than just a day-to-day living. So to have a plan to learn and to execute the spiritual aspects of life is the main motivation that the Shudra needs to adopt. So a brief description of that. Now, one important thing that we had talked about even last time was that we should not get discouraged that the society is not following through with an accurate depiction of these four varnas. It's not going through. There are lots of problems, and generally speaking, what people think is that the old days were much better. These days now everything has just gone to dogs, and the old days of Rama and Krishna were just wonderful, and we need to go back to those kinds of wonderful days. Swami Maheshanji says, I have got news for you. This is just grass is greener on the other side. It's Pollyanna thinking. It will never happen. The problems even in those days were immense. If you look at the life of Rama, what the fellow has to go through, to look at the life of Krishna, look at the life of anybody else. In the last 1,000 years, we have been slaves to alien cultures. And it is always a problem of some kind. And it is never going to be perfect. So the main thing is to do the best you can. Have the right attitude. And in terms of attitude, things break down in all over the case. And so in all four cases, the idealistic way to lead a life should be kept in front of you. Swami Maheshananji uses the word adarsha. So adarsha means a kind of like a picture of where you want to go. That should not be abandoned. And if that gets abandoned, then you're losing the efficacy of a life. So he gives examples of that. He says, suppose, now it's very, very popular, especially in some portions of the south, from what I understand, I'm not 100% certain, that Brahmanas are really looked down upon. That these guys are taking advantage, and they are all highbrow people, and they have spoiled the society, and they're really looked down upon, to a point where people are even afraid to show that they are Brahmins. So this is one kind of problem that can occur. And it shouldn't occur, because it just means you don't have the appreciation of the contribution that the Brahmins can make. The Brahmins are making the most important contribution, which is to uphold the structure of the Vedic thinking. And if they have some defects in their own character, if they do not allow Dalits to go into the mandirs and so on, which is a mistake. If they are defective in their way of implementing, that should be considered. But let Brahmins not be eradicated, because they are the upholders of the whole structure of the Vedic thinking. And then there are problems from each of the other cases, where, for example, Swamiji gives a very interesting example. Take the Kshatriyas, how they have really created a society where what should be done is compromised. So he gives an example. He says, in the days of the Mughal kingdom, Aurangzeb, so one of the courtiers of Aurangzeb was Maharaja Man Singh from Rajasthan. So he was supporting a Muslim king and lending him the support and the strength of the Rajputs. He was a Kshatriya. So the story goes that Shivaji Maharaj from Maharashtra wrote to Maharaja Man Singh, and he wrote a 17-page letter that he wrote himself, Swami Maheshananji says, and said to him, listen, this is a wrong thing that we are upholding the rule of a Muslim Raja in this country, and I am not interested in becoming the Raja of India. You become the Raja of India, but let you and I, both being Hindus, let us uphold the culture of Hinduism and get this guy out of there. And this is the considered view of my Pandits and my own view, Shivaji wrote to him. The history says that Man Singh thought about it, and he says that a Kshatriya's main law, his knowledge of the law is, you must support whoever you are working for. And so he says, he went to his Pandit, and his Pandit also agrees with him. And he says, who are you to teach me about all these Hinduism and so on and so forth? I'm eating the salt of Aurangzeb, and I must support him. And he rejected it. It was a glorious opportunity to topple Aurangzeb, went aside. So he says that the dharma of a Kshatriya, because the idea of a Muslim king that really spoiled all of the Vedic culture of India was abhorrent. But it was not clear to Man Singh. Similarly, he says, the Vaishyas of India, when the British came and ruled India, so the traders were taxed very heavily, very, very heavily. And so the traders were saying, listen, our job is to trade. And who rules us really doesn't make any difference to us. It could be Muslims, it could be British, it could be Hindus, it doesn't make any difference. Main thing is that we are making money and doing well. This is what really counts. Another mistake. Because they had a chance to really topple. It wasn't until Gandhiji came and did the Salt March and the rest of it. We delayed the freedom from the British for several decades. So there are problems in how these varnas talk to each other and so on. But they'll always be there. It doesn't matter. You just have to make sure that you're doing the best you can in your own personal life in adopting the unity between diversity. That's really all that you need to do. Then the final point that I would bring up here, which I was looking at that, is Swamiji says that I am often asked, why can't a Vaishya be a Brahmana? How come Shudra cannot be a Kshatriya? What is it? Is it just some kind of an anointed thing that once you are branded a particular jati, you cannot change the stripes in this life? He says, I'm asked that question very often. So he says, the answer to that is, this is a wrong way of looking at things. So he says, look, if you are a jiva, a human being, and just a limited person dealing with everyday problems and so on, it doesn't mean you are not Brahmana. I'm sorry, not Brahmana. It doesn't mean you are not Brahman. The very essence of Paramatma, the Atma, it doesn't mean that. So it's not as though you have to switch over from becoming a jiva to Ishvara. You're also Jivatma, but that is also Paramatma. The point is that you do not have to give up your jiva status to become free. Then what? Then what do I have to do? You have to see that even as a jiva, you are really nothing but Atma. So it is not abandoning anything. So it is like, if you are worried about being a room space and you want more space and you are told, listen, you don't have to give up the room space in order to become total space. It is just a change in your vision, that's it. So there is no duality, there is no dvaitam between a room space and total space. That is, if you think there is a duality, that is a starting point in your understanding, and it becomes a misunderstanding that has to be corrected. So even as a room space, you are still space. Even as a jiva, you are still the Atma. There's no difference. It is just that you're looking at yourself in a very limited way. But if you look at it another way, you find you are the same person as you wanted to be. And also, you've always been Atma. It's not as though you became Atma. Even as a jiva, you were Atma. So this is what is called Advaita, even while there is Dvaita. So the Advaita is not the absence of Dvaita. It means despite Dvaita. This is Advaita. So that's the situation between Jiva and Atma. Swamiji says it is exactly the same derivation that you have to do in the case of the different varnas with respect to each other. So it's not as though a Vaishya has to give up becoming a Vaishya and become a Kshatriya or a Brahmana. It's not the case like that. Why not? He says just like you find that the Jivatmas were always Paramatma, the room space was always total space. Similarly, each of the jatis is still Samaja Purusha. Samaja Purusha, the whole Samaja, the whole society really has all of them at the same time. So to say that why can't a Vaishya become this or why can't a Brahmana be like this is looking at Dvaita in the wrong way. There is no Dvaita. They are all part of the same body. They are different parts of the same body. Are you dismembering them? Are you saying that my hand wishes it is my face? So what do? You dismember the arm? This is stupidity. In fact, there is no body which is complete without all these parts. It does not constitute a body until you have all these parts. In fact, there is a verse from Sureshwaracharya that was quoted by Swamiji. I forget where that is. Is it? I think I saw that here somewhere. Oh yeah. I'll look for it. So Sureshwaracharya wrote a verse on this, the Chaturvarnyam. I quoted one from Gita, that I am the one that created that. This is the second one from Sureshwaracharya. He says, Chaturvarnya prasadhyam san na ekajati prasadhanam karmalam siddhaye loke shibikaha udvahan yatha. Difficult word. Let me repeat it one more time. Chaturvarnya prasadhyam san na ekajati prasadhanam karmalam siddhaye loke shibikon udvanam yatha. The English translation of that is that without the completeness of these four jatis in the society, to achieve a completeness of these to achieve the completeness of success and completeness of a society, you cannot look at each one separately. He says, just as in the case of Shibika. So Shibika is called a palaki. So palaki is where, those in the old days, if a Maharaja or a Maharani was to be carried by 4 people, so they are all putting the weight of the palaki on their shoulders. And he says that if one of those 4 is weak or non-existent, the palaki will stop. It cannot go any further. The 3 are very strong, but one of them is not there. So he says, karmalam siddhaye loke. So karma alam. So by having the completeness of karma, he says that it is difficult to do udbhavanam uddahanam of the Shibika. So Swamiji says, just like in the modern world also, if there is a car and if you have a puncture in one of the wheels, the whole car cannot go any further, cannot go anymore. It will break down. So similarly, these parts are complete in themselves because the entire body, similarly for your body and I, if we have, if the hands don't work, what kind of a body is that? It can somehow function, but no, all parts are necessary. So therefore, the Samaja Purusha is that person who understands that the entire society needs different kinds of people, and the society by itself will break down because it is designed by Ishvara. These are the 4 varnas that are important, and each one of them has a place in order to complete the social structure that is helpful to me in my own growth. That's kind of like the final word of this mantra. And so there has to be a mouth, there has to be different aspects of it, and that we should really revere it and enjoy it and to support it. That's kind of like the lesson of this mantra. So I think with that we close mantra number 11, and we will go into a new one next week, and look forward to unfolding that for a few classes, and then we will do an entire revision of the Brahma Sutta, of the Purusha Suktam, and with that we will close off this course and look for something else to do. Okay. Om Asato ma satgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityor ma amritam gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Function, but Krishna Ryan says, the Alvars of Tamil Sampradaya, mostly non-Brahmins, have composed Nalayarama. 4,000 verses are considered to be in Tamil Veda. These are chanted in Vaishnava temples and families of Tamil Sampradaya. Interesting. I didn't know that. Well, good for them. Shanti Kumar, good. Thanks, you're studying the 18th chapter. There's no other questions per se. I would like to share some thoughts about a text following this course, and giving it some thoughts. And I think what I'm tending to do, I haven't made my final decision, but I'm almost sure that I will do that, is to do what Swami Dayanand started to do late in his life, pardon me, which is, instead of taking a full text, he would take topics from different texts. And the advantages of doing that are that you don't have to fulfill the entire structure of the text. As long as people have had some idea about what Upanishads we are talking about or so on, you can zero in on certain concepts that are particularly meaningful and insightful, and spend some time just exposing that. And it could be 2 or 3 verses that will be done in a couple of sessions, maybe 3 sessions. Or it could be some topic that might take 10 classes. And also you can pick and choose from various sources that appeal to you. I can take some from Panchadashi, I can take some from Ishavasya Upanishad, from Kena Upanishad, and so on. I think I would like to have that freedom, and to have the freedom of getting into the depth of a topic, which is insightful for me, and therefore hopefully will be insightful for you also. So I haven't given it a kind of a title, but that's what I'm tending towards. Once this Purusha Suktam is complete, then on Tuesday nights, we will take something like that. Okay? Alright, with that I take your leave. Thank you for attending today's class, and we will see you next week. Om.